Hey, 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 happy Tuesday with Tamika. Thank you all so much for being here for yet another episode of Tuesday with Tamika, where you guys already know what it is. We believe in lifting as we climb, turning our trials into treasures, living a life to inspire and not impress, and letting God fully restore us. I am super excited about this interview that we have today. I know that it's going to be good. It is going to be jam-packed full of energy, full of laughs, and really full of insight. So, as you are preparing to listen to this episode, make sure you go and grab your pen and grab your journal because you guys know here on Tuesday with Tamika, we put things on paper on purpose. So, before I invite my guest in, I want to tell you all a quick story. This interview actually almost was postponed, like 10 minutes prior to us jumping on. I was getting ready to email my special guest and tell her that we would need to postpone this recording. And it's because my technology wasn't working. I need you guys to lean in and come with me as I tell you this story. So, I went over to Best Buy, and initially, the technician looks at my computer and he's like, well, I see why it's not working because my screen is cracked. Now, my screen is cracked because I was on a flight, and you guys already know how they don't care about our things the way we care about them. So, my computer was actually damaged in the flight. And I said, I know that the screen is broken, but I feel like there still can be another way for my mic and for my keypad to be connected. So I want to pause there and just share with you all. On the outside, there's some people listening to this podcast now that on the outside and maybe even in the inside, you feel and you look broken, you look damaged. But if you connect to the right source, you can still work like that thing, that vision that you have, that plan that you have for your life. It will still work. The thing is you have to make sure that you are connected to the right person. I had to go to the right person because I didn't have the resources to connect my keypad and to connect my microphone. But literally within a few clicks, he was able to connect it and everything is working out beautifully despite what it may look like on the outside. So I want to bring in my special guest cuz I feel like she is going to have some valuable content to share with just that opening story. As I was driving back home, I said, oh my God, this is so good. And nothing is wasted, you guys. Write that down. Everything in your life that you go through, every bump in the road, every perceived problem is something to add to your toolbox. Nothing is worth wasted. So before I get too excited, hey sis, you have a minute?
Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute? Hey sis, you got a minute?
I do. And I love that story. You're so right. I was like, oh my gosh, story of my life. It's like everything. Like I was like, oh my gosh, that's like my entire childhood, my full adulthood. I was like, that story just resonates with me so much. And I'm Christina Lucia, by the way. I should have said my name. I was just so taken by your story. I was like, wow, what a
Right?
story.
Isn't
What
it isn't
what
that just like how life is, Christina? I want you to share with the audience, all that you do, but isn't that how life is? We get a bunch of little broken pieces or we are the broken piece sometimes, but as long as we connect to the right source, which for me, that's God, right? As long as I'm connected to God, literally all things, it doesn't matter what's going on around me, who says no, who rejects me, who tells me I'm not enough. As long as I stay connected, everything always works out.
It's so true. And in both my personal path, like I've always had a very natural and strong sense of faith and a very
Mm.
natural and strong sense of imagination. And I feel like imagination and faith go hand in hand. And so I am Catholic. I was raised Catholic, and I've had people assume that I'm Catholic because I was raised in an Italian Catholic family. I'm like, no, it's who I am. And I
Mm,
realized that my sense of faith and spirituality comes to me very naturally.
mm,
And I realized because of that, I'm able to embrace my religion, embrace my faith in a certain way. And the healing work that I do, in light of what you just said, to like add on to that, one of the biggest things is I am an adult child, meaning that I am in a healing program from growing up in a dysfunctional family, from being abused.
Mhm.
And through working through my traumas has actually led me to this present moment where I'm here with you and your audience
Yeah.
talking to you. And that's why your story resonates so much with me. And when you work your 12 steps, the first 12 step is believing in a higher power, believing in God. And
Mhm.
when you believe in your higher power, you release a sense of control. And when we release a sense of control, you have a choice and you have a responsibility for that choice. And
Yeah.
when you realize you have a choice and responsibility, there is a great sense of freedom that comes to you. And
Mm.
the flip side of this, because for me, step one, I read it and I was like, of course there's God. Of course there's a higher power. And that's where, but so my journey with that step is actually very different. My journey is having patience for others, having
Mm.
patience for others, that step doesn't come so naturally to me.
Mm.
My step comes from when people in my program have changed the step to a higher power. I'm like, what do you mean it's not God? What do you mean God? If like it's God's not listed. I'm like, Christina, respect. Like, it's okay.
Yeah.
Some people higher power works better, but to me, there is God. Like I have a whole story. I know I lost my grandma. I've lost my mom fairly recently in
Mm.
the past couple of years, and I do have some very beautiful images and stories about heaven, and I do hold them close to me because I don't. I do struggle when people tell me, "Oh, it's a story." I'm like, "No, it's real because it
It's
is real because it's
real.
me. It's
You
me."
know,
And like I do. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Christina, what you said was so, oh gosh, there's so much that you said that was beautiful. But one thing that you just said that really resonated with me is being an adult child and learning to heal your inner child. So this morning, because I'm in California, Christina's in, where are you at, Christina?
I'm in New York. I'm in
Is
New
in New
York.
York. Yes. So I have a lot of clients that are in New York or that are in, I had a client this morning that's in Georgia. So there's this time
Mm,
difference. So a lot of times I have to get up early. So I had my first client this morning at 6 a.m. my time because it was 9 a.m. her time.
yeah.
And one of the things we talked about is this integration. Like when you heal, there's this integration that happens with your with your inner child and with your adult self, because there's many of us that have, been walking around as a full grown 30, 40-year-old, but yet your behaviors, your actions, and even your emotional state is stuck at that place of trauma. So I want, and so that was super beautiful. But then the other thing that I want us to unpack, so I really want us to
Yeah.
unpack that adult child like behavior and thought process
Yeah.
and the
Yeah.
healing that comes. But the other thing that you said is imagination, because I know your imagination has truly, it's your gift and it's what
Yeah.
really pays your bills. And
Yeah.
so many people as we grow up, what is it? I think it's Peter Pan where he says, like, don't lose
Mhm.
your imagination, right? And that to me is a trick of the enemy. I don't like to talk about the devil or bring him or give him any credit
No,
in
of
hardly
course.
anything that I do. But I do believe that that is one of the biggest traps that adults fall into is they stop playing and they stop
Mhm.
imagining. Let's
Yes,
talk about
absolutely.
wherever you want to start, because I feel like both of those topics are so big and so needed and will help so many people.
Absolutely. So the biggest thing with my healing, um, so I'll give a little bit about my background. So I grew up in rural Massachusetts. I went to New York for the first time at 10 years old, and I took one look at the city and said, I'm going to live here. And both my parents looked at me like, you're 10. Like, are you serious? You're 10. And I did at 18. I moved here. I went to school
Wow.
on Long Island, moved in at 22, right after, like literally a week after vacation. Like, I found an apartment with the help of friends driving me in. I always brought a buddy because, you want to be safe, And again,
Mhm.
I'm a country girl. I mean, I'm a city girl at heart, but I grew up in country.
Yeah.
So, you had to be realistic. Like, I had to learn, like, I had to learn a lot of stuff on my own. And neither of my parents are city people,
Mm.
still aren't city people. So again, there was a learning curve for myself. And from the early age, even before I did my healing work, I I was making choices and taking responsibility for these choices. I just wasn't aware of it. The other
Mm,
piece of my story I should share is I've always, always, always been a creative. I've always been highly imaginative. I
mm.
started formally training in art when I was 7 years old, and my
Wow.
art teacher took me early. Normally, she didn't take kids, say, they were 9, because the reason why I say this is for those in the audience that have children that are in art lessons. So I'm not talking just about paint by numbers. I'm talking about learning, not only learning to draw, but learning how to shade, learning your color wheel, how to mix colors, perspective, how to work with different mediums from pencil, charcoal, pastel, and then acrylic. It wasn't until later I started doing watercolor. But the
Mhm,
one thing I will say I got many things from my first art teacher, Mrs. Gagwen, Joanne Gagwen, and I'm forever grateful for, 'cause she taught me techniques I still do now. And I
mm,
carried over into my art degrees. That both my degrees are in the art, that I still apply. But also, she gave me room to play. She
mm,
gave me room. Like, she never said, "You have to draw this, you have to draw that." She let me draw what I want, and she
mm,
was giving me gentle corrections, because unfortunately, I did grow up in a dysfunctional family.
mm,
I was abused constantly. I was misunderstood. I was and I realized part of that is because my caregivers, particularly my mom and I, were the ones where the dysfunction originated.
mm,
My mom, unfortunately, did suffer from anxieties and narcissism, and she didn't have the vocabulary to talk about feelings, and what led me on my healing path. So because I grew up in a social family, I actually was living a double life for a long time,
mm,
where I was working in corporate Wall Street during the day and then doing my drawing and dancing, because I am a competitive dancer as well. And I started dancing as a kid, took a break from it, never thought I was good enough, and then I found my way into international Latin and never looked back.
wow.
And so that's why too, if my voice is a little scratchy, I was out dancing last night. I was in my lessons. I was in the studio last night working on stuff. And before I hopped on, I was doing my dance practice. I practice every day. So I dance and draw every day presently.
Mm,
But there was a period in my life where I was fitting it in. It wasn't my staple. And
mm,
my mom and I had a big fight. And it was one of those bottom moments, and that's what led me to start seeing a therapist, and then my therapist led me into other therapies, and then when she released me, that's when I found my ACA work. And the reason why I bring that up is because the biggest thing I remember from my first therapy session is my therapist asked me, "How are you feeling?" And
mm,
I could not answer that question.
wow.
And that's when she gave me the feelings list. And through my therapy, what we worked on and what I still work on is what you mentioned before is my inner child and my critical parent.
Mm,
And what I've realized is that learning to talk about your feelings is a skill. And when we work on how to express our feelings and how to recognize our feelings, we're able to communicate more effectively. And
yeah.
the other thing I realized too is that critical parent and inner child, we're never going to, they're never going to evaporate. They're always going to be there. And it's about living in harmony with them. And the other thing
Yes.
I've exactly, yeah, and the other thing I've realized too, which is where I have to what I work on, because I'm a dancer, because I'm a creative, I'm also very disciplined. Because in
Mm.
order to dance and illustrate the way I am, and now that I'm an author as well, you need to have discipline.
You know what you're
Like, I
sharing.
can't go ahead, please.
Oh, no, I was just gonna just chime in just really quickly about the creative side. I feel like there's many people that are listening right now, and they're like minds are probably already being blown because they're like, I draw, I sing, I dance. Like they're having all these like aha moments, and I don't think people realize that that creative side is like a protection. It's. I feel like it's the gift to the wounded child.
Mhm.
Creativity is a gift to the wounded child, and a lot of times you said something that I was like, oh my gosh, that's going to be the name of this podcast. And I'm trying to remember it. So hopefully it comes back to you. But you said your art teacher, she let you play and
Play,
draw, right? Yes. And so I love
play
that
and draw.
um there was another it's going to come back to me. I know it will, or I'll listen back to it and I'll title this episode that, because it's so important for us not to be critical to ourselves when we're really Really, Christina, life is like a paintbrush. It's a canvas, and
Yeah.
we 0 to 18, we have no um someone else is holding the paintbrush and they're painting it for us, and they're directing us and they're showing us. But literally, I feel like at 18, we get a blank canvas and we get to
Yeah.
paint the life that we want. How have you
Absolutely.
gone through your healing process? And I believe that healing doesn't have a period. So it's a continual thing,
It's
just like you
continual.
said. And I
Absolutely.
love that you said these things never go away, because I have so many of my
Mhm.
clients, they say, well, when does it stop? And I say, never. You just learn to live in harmony with it.
Yes. Yes, and it's beautiful. It's a beautiful harmony. Like, I'm still working on like, I don't want people to think like, "Oh, I'm in this, like, aura of harmony," but it is beautiful, though. Like, it is
Mm,
beautiful because I will cry, but then I'll take a step back and know that something beautiful is around the corner.
mm.
And that having that choice to know that is really amazing. It's really and also too, if I could share this too, I think you'll I know you'll not even I think, I know you're gonna appreciate this. I really believe that when God shuts a door,
Mm.
it's because he's opening another one. And the other thing I want to add to that too is that, like, let's say we like from like I want to be married, I want kids, I want certain specific things. So like right now, I'll give a more specific example. Like right now, my book is in preview and it's being previewed and my goal is 50 reviews. And I'm on my way to 50. I'm over 30. I'm gonna get to
Yes.
50 people. I'm an overachiever. I believe in myself. I got this. But the people that have told me no, and the people have told me,
Mm,
oh, well, don't be upset if you don't get to 50. I've chosen not to listen to those people because I know me, I'm gonna reach 50 and God knows me too. And God's like, oh dear God, these poor people, like they don't know what they're dealing with. But also too, when the people have told me no during my review, I realize this is God's way of saying, Christina, they're not the right 50 for you. They
yes.
don't belong there. And the same thing with like dating, because like I do want to be married, I do want kids, and every time I've had a breakup, or every time something doesn't go through, I'm like, God knows where I want to be.
Mhm.
Even the times where I met someone where I'm like, oh my gosh, I think this is it. Oh my gosh, I really want to immerse in this. He knows who I'm supposed to be with. Like he knows
Yes.
who's supposed to read my books. He knows what children are going to love and cherish my toys. He knows what people are going to want to listen to me reading my book. And there's something again, that's that choice and responsibility. And
Yeah.
when you put your and I know it's hard. Like I'm saying that for
Mhm.
people out there listening to this that are like, I get it. I know it's hard because I still struggle with it. And I
Mhm.
do believe in God. I always have, I always will. And I know it's hard to trust in that because I had a moment this morning and I thought, no, Christina, God's holding you. He's taking care of you. And also, I'll share this other really funny story. So my grandma is a pistol, and I believe so. I'm her namesake. That's why I'm a Lucia. Her name is
Okay.
Lucy. Everyone knows her as Lucy, but she is Lucia as well. I'm named after her, and she was so proud of that. I was her favorite, still her favorite, I believe. And 'cause I know I am. It's like it's my grandma. I know. I know I totally was not obnoxious, but I do believe that God has an office. And I think my grandma has a waiting room. And I think when I have moments like this, moments where I get upset, I just have this, I can hear my mom's voice in my head, like, don't worry, your grandmother's running to God's office for an emergency meeting. And it's like, I mean, like, and it's like, I believe we're all allowed to have our images of God, but I do believe he hold us. Like I do
Mm.
so believe in the footprints poem. Like it's my favorite poem. I actually have it right over here on my my clown bookcase table thingy. And I believe in that. I believe he
Yeah.
does carry us and whoever your higher power is, if you trust and believe in him or her, you want to be I'm very open-minded, although for me, God is a man. I'm Italian. What can I say? Like it's just how it rolls. I mean, like I just that's just, like I do believe God's Italian. That's just me. Like, I mean, it's so rude in me. I know that sounds totally crazy, but like,
You know what,
I
Christina,
believe
what's so funny about that? Because I always tell people, I feel like if Jesus was like here on earth, he would be like a rapper. And people are like, you can't say that about Jesus. And I'm like,
why
no,
not?
he totally would be. Because if you read the Bible, the way he talked to people, he was like dissing them and he was giving them like,
Yeah,
so
why not? Yeah.
I think that that's the beautiful thing about our imagination, right? Because he's literally going to come to us the way that we need to hear him. It goes back to the story I was talking about being broken, but the connector is going to connect exactly the way we need to connect. And I want to just encourage you really quickly because and you're really encouraging me because I've moved into this space of like relationships, and my audience
Mhm.
knows, I was just talking all about healing, 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 and now recently I've started talking more about relationships, and I started coaching women through their healing and onto like attracting the man of their prayers and who they truly
Mhm.
want. So I love that you're
Mhm.
sharing that personal piece about you, because I believe that when we heal, we can build, right? And I also want you to kind of realize what I know you do, and I know you'll appreciate this. Each time it gets better, right? So I'm sure when you were in like that dark place and starting your healing journey, you were probably attracting trash and crappy dudes and people that, right? And then now all of a
Yes.
sudden it's like,
Yes.
wow, they keep getting better.
Well, something I could share too. So the day my mom and I had a fight, I met this man and I fell head over heels in love with him. And so funny story about him, like he was very handsome and it hurts because it did hurt. The breakup hurt, the fact that we didn't work out hurt for many reasons, but what also hurt is the women around me when they saw his picture, they all said to me, "Oh my gosh, you went out with someone that handsome, blah, blah, blah." And it really hurt because
Mhm.
I'm an attractive woman.
Yes.
Like, I'm a really attractive woman. Honestly, we were a good-looking couple. Like, he had long hair, I have long hair. Like, he was Turkish, I'm Italian American. I wear dresses and heels or like a cute flat, and like he still had like jeans and leather jacket, cowboy, but we're both very intelligent. Like, we were
A
a
good
poster
match.
couple. So when women said this to me, I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, I know this man, but the other point of this story is when I did start my healing a year later, and this is something. So I was in one of my healing steps before I got to ACA. Along the way, I was still with my therapist at this point. I did do a landmark forum, and I feel like the forum was enough for me. I personally feel like ACA is a better fit for my healing
Mhm,
because I feel
mhm,
like it's more. I'm one of those people where I need to leave the classroom. Like
mm.
I'm good. I can sit in the classroom again,
Christina,
but
can you share ACS for us, for
oh,
folks that
ACA.
may be
Oh, ACA.
not
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
familiar with it?
Oh, absolutely. So ACA stands for Adult Children of Alcoholics.
Yes.
And there is a website. And I'm after this show, I will email Tamika. I will email Tamika. I'll email you their main website. The beautiful thing about their website is that it's not only within the US, it's worldwide, it's international. And they have meetings both in person, on Zoom, via phone. And their website is set up so that you can type in your zip code and you're
Mhm,
given a list of meetings. And in addition to these meetings, there's different forms of the meetings, meaning
mhm,
there are meetings specifically like working through the 12-step workbook with
mhm.
people. There are meetings like I go to where a fellow, and I've been one of the fellows, like I actually really enjoy doing the host the meeting, and I genuinely like doing it. I'm a leader, I'm an overachiever. Like I love being like, yeah, like, and it's very, yeah, it's actually too for me. It's actually, I know this is part of my healing, stepping back and
Mhm.
not getting upset when I can't lead. Because I had another fellow say to me, "Well, you already did it twice this year," but no one was volunteering. That's why I volunteered the second time. And then I got offended. Like, I'll just share this really fast. Like, I did get offended because I've seen these two fellows sharing it over the past 2 months, and my inner child has been throwing tantrums. Like, Christina,
Mhm.
let it go. God, it's okay because God's holding you. And also, you don't have to be in charge all the time. Because I raised my
Mm.
siblings, I was in a space where I was taught to grow up very quickly. That was also part of the abuse, unfortunately. I mean, and so it takes me a minute to step back. Like, it's much easier for me to cook a meal for 30 people than to go to a party as a guest of one of the 30 guests. Like, it is, I know that sounds really wacky, but it's just how I roll. And again, that's me working in harmony, knowing that I have
Yes.
to talk myself off the ledge. But anyway, I kind of got off topic about
No,
ACA, but
that's
uh,
so good, just what you said, because I know
yeah,
people are wondering, like, how, how do I know if I'm an adult child? What
yeah,
you
yeah.
said painted a beautiful picture, because people don't realize that that's something that, Christina, I would go to a birthday party that like invited. and I would be like cleaning up and doing it. And people are like, what are you doing? And I'm like, that was my identity, right? Because I was
Personified.
parentified. And so
That's excuse
I
me.
was a parent at a very young age to children I didn't birth, right? But they were my siblings, and I always felt responsible for everyone. And my identity was tied up into like being the leader, being the one to do it, being,
Mhm.
and this is still something that I'm working through in secret. The cat's out the bag TWT family. I have not shared with people, but I used to attend adult child of narcotics because, as you all know, my mom was and still is addicted to drugs. So I had to go through those steps to heal my inner child because I would show up as 4-year-old Tamika, 6-year-old Tamika, and
Mhm.
doing the work, I have really integrated um, to be the woman that I am today. So I love you didn't go out on a tangent. I believe, like I said, nothing's wasted. That's so good that you shared
Yeah.
that.
The other thing I like to share too, so two resources that helped me. So before I started going to ACA, I read the Adult Children of Alcoholics book, which is a
Mm,
small, about 300 pages. And it's really about the signs of being an adult child, the things we go through. And the other big thing, and it's like I mean, we're both Christian. So for us, it's the Bible. For other people, if you're Jewish, your Torah, the big red book. Like,
mm,
that's really powerful. And the other big thing about ACA work, because a lot of people were unaware of my mom's anxiety and narcissism. And my mom actually, the way I realized, like, I can't diagnose her as that because she's been gone for a while now, but gone for a couple of years, not a while, a couple of years. But I realized my mom was also a para-alcoholic, meaning she had the
mm.
characteristics of alcoholic. So the thing too is when you have a parent, whether it's in my situation like a para-alcoholic or as you shared, a parent who suffers from addiction or alcoholism, it's not about the actual consumption of the drugs, the actual consumption of the alcohol. It's the behaviors that result from that.
Yes.
It's the unkept promises. It's the lack of talking about feelings. It's the like, I remember once as a kid, because I have a birthday coming up, and I was telling Tamika before how I'm gathering RCPs, and I'm getting a lot of people say, "Oh, I'll try to make it. Oh, we'll see." And I see as God saying, "You're not inviting the right people."
Yeah.
And
Oh,
it's like, and it's okay because I'm gonna have a fun party. I know I'm gonna have a fun party. I'm like, no, like I had a good cry this morning, and I was like, no, you're gonna it's plenty of time. We're at the end of January. My birthday is on February 15th. My party's on the 18th. Like, it's gonna be fab. Like, I know me, it's
yes.
fine. It's gonna be great. And anyone that's saying no, they're crazy because I'm the party girl. Like, I'm the fun.
Right.
The girl you want at the party. Like, it's like, woo! Like when I host, I open the door with a glass of wine in my hand and my really
Yes.
smart apron on. I'm totally like pouring wine and like making homemade pasta, and everyone's like, how are you single? And I'm like, I know, like, I will find the right man because I know the right man's gonna be like, I'm not letting you go, girl. Like, you are.
Yes.
But but my point is like when you start focusing on the behaviors, it does open
Mhm.
up understanding. And the other beautiful thing, and I imagine Tamika, you experience this in your rooms too that you've attended and been in. There is there is a crosstalk policy in ACA, meaning that we don't give advice and we listen.
Mhm.
And there's something very powerful about listening. So like what I was about to share is so when I turned 12, it was my 12th birthday, I remember it very clearly. I said to my mom, I want homemade pizza for dinner. And my mom said, no, 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 I'm gonna make you pasta.
Mm,
And I love pasta. I love making homemade pasta. I love my mom's pasta, but I asked for pizza. And my
mm,
mom told me no. And then I remember leaving the room and crying. And I went to my mom later and said, you cooked me a really beautiful meal, but I really wanted this for dinner. And she told me I was wrong. Told
mm.
me, no, I cooked you a nice meal. And then she actually told people about it
Wow.
and criticized me for it. And then I watched both my siblings ask for pizza and get pizza. And it's really not about the food. It's about the fact that it was my birthday and I
Yes.
asked for something. And
And
I
not
was told,
being heard and not being seen and not being like all of those things
yeah,
that we need as a child to feel safe. And I
yeah.
love that you're sharing this story. I also want you to kind of give us some indicators as if you are
Yeah.
struggling from this, but I also want to take it a little further because a lot of
Sure.
times we only think of like abuse being if your parent was like an alcoholic or a drug out, all these different things that they have these. Because one thing that you keep saying, and I'm like, yes, 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 that's it. It's the behavior, like it's these behaviors, right? So I know several people, just even as you're talking, their images are coming into my mind. And so it may be overconsumption of like church. There are some people that put church above their children. And so
Mhm.
they're these children of pastors and these children of people, and they never felt like their parents came to their events. They didn't come to their,
Mhm.
it may be workaholic, your parents provided for you and you guys always had a roof over your head, but they never had enough time to sit and play with you or color with you or draw with you. And you didn't have birthday parties, and they always made it seem like, well, look, you have this roof over your head, and children in Africa, which I never understood when parents said that children in Africa are starving, and it's like, what does that have to do with me, right? Like I can't send them my dinner. Like there's nothing I could do. Right. But I want folks to understand that sometimes we minimize our trauma and our hurt because it's not as big as someone else's. But as Christina is sharing, her mom not cooking that pizza left a wound. It left a
Yeah.
wound, and it probably even made her feel like, well, you can't ask what you need because people aren't going to give it to you anyways. And so I want us to literally take a moment after this podcast and think about all those times when you were a child and write down all the times your voice got shut down, or your questions, the things that you wanted, they weren't given to you, and how that affected you today. Because I know that there's people listening to this podcast that are a part of the TWT family, and I love you all, or that are a part of Christina's tribe. And you guys are like, oh my gosh, like you're having these aha moments through the storytelling and through us illustrating what it looks like. So, Christina, tell us some more like indicators or signs that maybe you're suffering and you are an adult child.
A lot of the signs that I realized and found, it's apologizing a lot.
Mm,
That's a big one, and that's something that I constantly have to work on. It's also a fear of asking other people to commit to me. So the thing with adult children is that, and this is also goes like the first book I mentioned, the one that's like the 2 to 300 pages. We either go one route or the other. And what I believe is that I do believe we are born a certain way. I believe we are born. And so I believe there are two types of people, where I shouldn't say just I believe, but it's also in the book, like psychologists and other people that are qualified to write about this have talked about it. We are programmed to be more hesitant, or we're programmed to be more determined and
mm,
whatnot. What I believe happens with abuse in my journey, what I realize, it enhances who we are. If you're
mm,
already typically hesitant to do stuff, or you're already typical to commit, you go that way. So I'm an overachiever. So the abuse actually enhanced my overachiever, my consistency, because what it does is that it's this running. If I can run so far and I can climb so high, no one is going to hurt me. I had
mm,
I was with a man for a long time that would beat me.
mm,
And I always and I always think of the times that he would beat me, and I feel like it's like, how far can I run so that I won't be criticized, so that I won't be told I'm not good enough.
mhm.
Whereas the opposite, the inconsistency, it's like, well, I'm afraid of making a mistake. I'm going to be
Wow.
criticized anyway. I'm afraid of making mistakes. So it can go one or two ways. Now, for me personally, I already am an overachiever. I already am that. And it does show up in my life. Like I constantly, and I realize again, living in harmony, I am an overachiever. With or without, I could have grown up in a leave it to beaver household, and I
Right.
would still be an overachiever. And that's the beauty of this too, is that it makes you realize that, okay, like I wasn't doomed, I wasn't put on the damned list. Like, no, like this is just who I am. And it's something that I need to learn to work with. And yes, the abuse enhanced it. And I have a choice to work through these traumas and
Mm,
utilize that enhancement, make it a beautiful thing. At the same time, it's also pulling back and realizing, okay, I don't have to do this. So those are the
yes.
The
Wouldn't
big
you say also, Christina, like being that overachiever and healing through some of your childhood stuff, it's hard to celebrate? Like it's hard,
Mhm.
like when you have these big milestones, like I really
Yes.
want to get into some of the amazing stuff that you've already done, but
Yeah.
don't you sometimes feel like you have to slow down and celebrate because then it's already like on to the next thing because that wasn't big enough or that wasn't, I didn't get what I want, it didn't make me feel the way. So you're almost on like this imaginary ladder and there's nowhere to go.
Absolutely, and I actually went through that before I went to ACA because I come back from a trip, I'm like, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," and I get all excited for this next thing, and I'd be like, "Oh, that's it. Oh, that's it." And I have been learning to slow down the past couple of years. And
Yeah.
when I do go away, and I've also realized too, because I love to travel, and Europe
Mhm.
was one of my favorite places in the world, and I've learned, no, you choose 2 places to go to, and you give yourself this amount of days to go, and
Mm.
you relax,
Mhm.
and you immerse. And something I can share is, so my mom left this world in 2019, and one of the biggest things in my healing journey as well is that I realized my mom was sick.
Mm.
I do recognize that. I recognize anxiety and narcissism are illnesses, and I have to respect this other part of ACA that is so powerful is that I'm learning that I need to respect my mom's choices. I'm
Mm.
learning that even though there was a trauma on my 12th birthday, among other traumas, she was trying to be the best mother she could. And
Mhm.
her version of being the best mother she could was saying no to me on certain things. Like in her eyes, she was doing something really great. But because of these other things, she couldn't see the opposite side. And with her gone, I realized the woman in heaven now is the one I wanted here. I have to
Mm.
be respectful that she's where she needs to be right now and that she's safe
Wow.
and okay. But I also realized too that she wasn't doing all these things on purpose.
Wow.
She wasn't purposely inflicting these things on me. She really was doing the best she could. And
Mm.
that's a phrase you hear a lot in ACA and therapy. It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to get to that point where you can understand that phrase because it is a trigger phrase for a long, long time. So for people out there, I'm sharing it. I know I'm crying right now, but I'm sharing it because I realize it's a big point in my healing process. And the reason why I'm sharing it is, so one of the other big things is my mom always said we travel together. And for one reason or another, it didn't work out. Like there was one trip I was supposed to go on with her, and one of my siblings wanted to go, and so she uninvited me and took that sibling on that trip.
Mm.
And on top of it, she came back and told me all about the trip, and it just hurt even more because it was a place
Mm.
I still haven't been to yet. I know I'll go there because it's me, but it hurt, it hurt so much. And then she wanted me to go with her on this other trip, and I said no because A, it was a place I didn't want to go to with her, and B, her anxiety was so bad at that point that because of
Mm.
my healing and therapy, I was like, I cannot be with her. And that's the other thing too, I've learned, like, there are other family members in my life that are still alive and well, but because they're not doing this work, I have my time limits, and people judge me for
Yes.
not wanting to spend time with them. I'm like, no, they don't respect me. Their inner children come at me and they rage at me, and I learned to walk out of the room and let it go. It happened on Christmas
Yeah.
Eve. Like, I poured myself a glass of wine and I went in the other room and I was like,
Yes.
nope,
And I think
I'm
one of the
relinquishing it.
best things that we can do as we're healing is love and respect ourselves.
Oh
We
my
so
gosh,
often
yes.
we self-abandon. And so we self-abandon because we're looking for the approval, we're looking for the acceptance of other folks.
Mhm.
But if they, like you said, if they're not on their healing journey and if they're not walking the walk and doing the stuff, they
Yeah.
can't be with us and we can't be with them. Like why continue to put your wounded self in an environment that's going to afflict more pain. So this self-awareness happens when you begin to heal and you realize like there came a time where I would like set timers and I would say, I'm only talking to this person for this amount of time and this, and then once that time, but then now I'm at the point where I'm like, I don't have to. And coming to that realization of like, I don't have to, I don't, whether and you keep repeating it, it's a choice. Healing is a
Yes.
choice. um Growing is a choice. You're changing your mindset. Staying broken even is a choice because
Mhm.
now we have access. We have
Yeah.
access and tools to heal. So
Yeah.
all of these resources that we're talking about, we're going to put those in the show notes. So those of you that are listening, you'll have access to those things as well. But Christina, I want to kind of bring this full circle and talk about the way you have imagined your life. And what are you doing today? Because I know you're dancing and you have these books. I really want to hear about your books that you have illustrated and written and the audio. Like, I want to hear how all of the things has brought you to this point where you're at.
Yeah. So the day I found out my mom was ill, I swear it was my grandma. After I got off the phone with my father, and it was my sister I also spoke to that day, I went online and filed for my LLC. And then a couple of days later, I found out my mom had stage 4 lung cancer. And of course, she
Mm.
got mad at me for getting upset because I had no idea. Like, and I was like, okay, if I'm a good Italian daughter. I was like, okay, mom, I'm sorry. Like, what do you need? You know what I mean? And I was positive for her. I was like, nope, I have a responsibility to be positive for my mother. And a week later, my mom passed, and I actually was back here in New York because my emotional tank was
Mm.
so low. And I realized I need to refill. And I was judged for that. I still am judged for that. But you know what? Again, like what you said, when you have someone in your life that's ill or needs you to be 100%, you have a responsibility to yourself to refill. And
Yes.
if your refill is going home and getting a good night's rest, if your refill is taking a break from visiting, you're not a bad person. You're actually doing them a favor because they need nothing but good energy. And whatever you need to do to get that good energy, you need to do. Like, you have a responsibility yourself first. And the day I remember coming home that day, and I opened my mailbox, and I got my first piece of mail addressed to my LLC.
Mm.
And it was saying that my LLC was approved. And I knew it was my mom and grandma. I know my grandma hugged my mom that morning when she went to heaven and said, Linda, she's going to get this.
Mm.
She's going to get this sign. And at that point, I just had these crochet characters that someone had pointed out to me a couple of months earlier. You have a business here, because I was making them as baby gifts. I've been doing it for a couple of years. And actually, in light of the man I mentioned, it was actually part of my healing process of healing from him, among other people, because I was dating like a maniac because I was trying to bury this hurt, and
Yeah.
but also, ladies, once you heal, and also gentlemen, once you heal, though, you realize what a jerk they were and how great it is that it didn't work out, because that
Yeah.
really happened with this guy. Like, I really realized, like, oh, thank God that one tabled when it did, because it would have been a disaster if it got complex, and I knew the characters would lead me to an answer, because people are giving me a hard time. Well, how are you going to make all of these? Can you manufacture? But I'm like, no, the character is going to lead to an answer. And like I
Mm.
said, I'm an overachiever. I'm very diligent. And when I get a gut feeling, my gut feelings are very strong. And I've learned through my healing work to trust those gut feelings, because also part
Mm.
of being an adult child is being a people pleaser. And when you
Mhm.
recognize that you're a people pleaser, and I'm guilty of that, again, I'm not perfect. I've done that and I still do it. And I'm learning, no, don't. You don't have to do that. You're not a bad person. If you're not inviting someone to this, you're not a bad person. If you're not giving this person attention, like, no, you need to focus your list. So I stuck with my gut, and the characters led me to blog. And
Mm.
then my blog led me to realize I'm supposed to be an author. And I
Wow.
already had been an artist for my entire life, so that came in very naturally. And since I've made that discovery, I not only write my original blog, I also write a second blog. I just launched a podcast. My
Wow.
books are I have 5 coming out this year. The first one's in preview right now. There's going to be 15 books in all. I'm actually working on the next 5 right now. They're already written. My editor's working on that. I'm actually illustrating a book right now. So I will basically, by November this year, November 2023, depending on when you're listening to this, I will have 5 books out. I will have 5 books fully illustrated, edited, and ready to come out in the following year. On top of, probably, knowing me, I probably will have like 11 through 15 at least, like, outlined, if not written, knowing me. Because, like, let's face it, I mean, this is why I say I need someone special. I'm going to drive some man crazy. Like, this is why it's so important that I cook well. I'm a really good cook and a really good baker. And I joke, because my grandma was a piece of work, but she was an amazing cook. And I said, We
That's
attract
what
men
made
with
her
our
a keeper.
looks. I know we attract men with our looks. My grandma was a beautiful woman, very beautiful woman. I always say our looks attract the men, our cooking keeps them. Like there has to be
Yes.
something like it's just how it is. That's just my family. My sister, my other family members are amazing with like construction and power tools and fixing things. I'm not. I'm gonna be honest. Like I'm just not that girl. But what to loop it back to what you're saying, my books and my mission are all about communication between the parent
Mm,
and child. And in my books, I can actually pull her out for you to see. So I have Bella, my main character, and Bella actually is my child self.
wow.
Bella is my nickname, and it's actually through writing these books where I realized because originally the name came from my friend's little girl, Isabella. This is Bella.
Mm,
And when I started writing, I was like, Bella's been my nickname for a long time. But again, people pleaser, adult child. I'm like, I can't name a character. No, my friend's little girl actually led me to realize no, like it took a toddler to make me realize in my healing work, realize, no, I need to
wow.
own this. Like Bella's my nickname. I should not be embarrassed that people call me beautiful or Bella, especially if they don't know my name. That's my
Mm,
most common nickname. And I'm in New York City, so people are always catcalling at each other and like
yeah.
you just learn to ignore it, you know what I mean? Like in every big city, I'm sure in LA you have like the same thing. Like,
Yes.
you know, we're city girls. But I realized that, and also when writing these books, I realized my healing work has made me realize the importance of communication and feelings, and that's what exactly
Mm,
what happens in each story. I've chosen transitions that we all go through, and
wow.
I've chosen feelings that we all feel. Because again, working off of that feeling list, and what happens is when Bella feels anxious or nervous, her parents or her aunt or uncle or the other special adult in the story they relate to her as an adult. So it's that
Mm,
that moment of like, oh, even adults get scared. Even adults need to ask for help. You know,
yeah.
that sense of humanity of uniting. And I also have an activities beyond the book section in the back of every book. Because again, it's like we were saying earlier about when we were talking about ACA and referring to these resources. You can listen to us talking, but let's face it, we all need a roadmap. And so that's what I
Yes.
do in the back of each book is I have activities beyond the book. So I'm pointing out things I
Wow.
do so that way you can apply it to your family. Cause I'm an aunt, I'm a godmother. I'm an aunt to many beyond like my blood relative, beyond my nephew, you know, and even just from my godchild's family to my nephew's family, every family is different. And
Yeah.
every family has like a different way of doing things and different likes and dislikes. And it's all about that, you know, it's all
Mhm.
about you taking it and making it your own. And the other
Yeah.
thing I do, and I actually have a gift for your audience. So in
Oh.
addition to my drawings I always storyboard when I illustrate. And when I say a
Mm,
storyboard, it's a template for a coloring book. So I have a
mhm,
coloring drawing for your audience because again, if you're listening to this and you're like, well, geez, Christina, you know, I don't draw, I'm not a dancer. Coloring is something we could all do. And it's a great way to
mhm,
let your inner child play. And it's great for you to play with your child. And
mhm.
coloring is soothing, it's relaxing, and there will be coloring books, actual coloring books coming out
Wow.
with my books too. I'm working with my team on getting that. Like that's the thing too, when you both illustrate and write your books, it does give me this freedom because like it's not that middleman. I'm like, I do it myself, you know,
I
and again, I also
love
have to be
this.
patient.
Thank
Yeah.
you so much for that gift. I cannot wait. This has been so refreshing. Like it was everything that I didn't even know that I needed to discuss today. And it's giving me so many ideas of how to continue to lead my audience because I talk a lot about the inner healing and I have a visualization that I give them and literally to lead their inner child. And I can't wait for your books to come out because I am going to be one of the first ones because those resources in the back are so needed. And look at Big Girl Bed. Oh my God, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. You
Is
all,
it okay if
this,
I
go ahead. Yeah,
is it okay if I read the dedication?
please do.
Yeah. So this is the dedication of my first book. Every book I'm doing a little just to make sure I cover everybody. But this dedication, this is the first book of the series. So I wrote this first book is dedicated to my trinity of angels, my great
Mm,
grandmother, grandmother, and mother who are at my side through this whole process. These books are love letters between my mom and I, which I wish to share with all the kiddos of the world. Special thanks to my dear friend Sue, for writing this note to me at the beginning of my journey. Congratulations on the books, Christina. Your mom will be so proud of you. Love always, Christina Lucia, XOXO.
I got chills. Ah,
Yeah. If
this
it's, if we had time, like I could actually share two stories of like how my mom, like, so I don't mean to go off topic again, but like I do that a lot. Like I love telling stories. That's why I'm an author, people. That's why I'm a blogger. Like this is
please
why I'm a writer.
share.
That's why
Yes.
I'm an artist. So although my mom wasn't good at saying I love you, she said I love you several times to me. And it's
Mm,
come in different signs. Like my sister found my childhood lovey among her clothes. My mom, my first birthday without her, I was in church and the priest invited, it happened to be, my birthday is February 15th. And the priest asked who was a Valentine's birthday. And it was actually me and the man sitting next to me. He invited
wow.
us not only on the altar, gave us chocolates, but also had the whole congregation sing happy birthday to me. And I knew it was my mom. But the two most powerful, like, and the other two powerful ways she said, I love you is when I went through her things, I was looking for this rosary that I bought for her in Notre Dame. Paris is one of my favorite cities. And she always gave me a hard time for loving it so much. But I bought her a rosary. And of course, the Catholics out there are going to appreciate this. So we're obsessed about blessing everything. I'm the same way too. I'm like, is it blessed? Like, is it safe? It's a Catholic thing. If you're Catholic, you know what I'm talking about. So my mom gave me this look on Christmas Day, like when I gave it to her. I'm like, it's blessed, relax. But I was looking for it and I asked my sister later on that day, I said, I was looking for this rosary I gave mom. I couldn't find it. She said, could you describe it to me? They put it with her. It's with my mom. And I know it was my mom that intervened and chose it. And then the fourth story, I always like, I know I'm sharing four things, but I feel like they're really important. I want people, I just feel comfortable with you and your audience. And I really want to give this, I really want to, it's helpful for me to say it, but also I hope it helps somebody that's listening. The other one is when I mentioned my mom and I never traveled together. So when I travel now, I know she's with me. But last year when I went on one of my Italy trips, so it was my third time in Italy and I chose Florence and Cinque Terre. And I swear it was, I knew going into it, my mom and grandma were calling me there. And that first night in the Piazza in Florence, I realized, oh my God, mom finally kept her promise. We're
Mm,
traveling together. And it was
mm,
just this beautiful trip. And my mom's anxieties, like she was afraid of heights, she was afraid of water. And people that have been to Cinque Terre, like it's a lot of cliffs, it's a lot of climbing, and then the oceans out there, they're absolutely gorgeous. And I had so much fun on the beaches out there, but they're rock beaches. And when you
mhm.
go in, again, it's like a natural wave pool and it's super fun. But with my mom's anxieties, I know she would have been freaked out. Like she wouldn't, I realized, oh my gosh, mom is in the ocean with me, looking at this blue sky and then this super blue water. She's climbing these mountains and she's in Florence with me, listening to people sing opera on the street and eating
Mm.
amazing pizza.
Yeah.
And drinking really great my pizza. I love pasta too, people. Don't get me wrong. I love making homemade ravioli. Like I love making pasta. It's like my favorite thing in the world. So don't get me wrong, I love pasta. But I'm just like teasing my mom. She knows I know.
Yes. You're like, I
But
got my
then
pizza. I
I
got
got
it.
my pizza. I know. It really isn't about the pizza. It was more about what you said about the not
Yeah.
listening. That's the more important part of the
Mhm.
story. And then the other funny thing I'll share about that Italy trip. So I always shop in Europe because it's cheaper. I'm a frugal person. I like lovely things, but I also believe in like if I can get for a better price there, I'm gonna go there. Like I'm an investor. I'm realistic. And so I went to my store and again, it's always a gamble when you're buying couture overseas. You never know if they're going to have exactly what you want. And so I
Mhm.
said, I'm looking for a replacement of this. I actually had my piece with me. I was able to show them, and sure enough, they did. And I mean, I had to go back to my hotel to grab my passport for like the tax refund. I could just hear my mom's voice in my head. That's your grandmother. I'm not shopping with you. That's your grandmother. Your grandmother, that's your grandma. Your grandma and you went shopping.
That
Like
wasn't
your
me.
grandma that way. But I
Oh,
wanted to share that
Christina.
because I do believe it just goes to show, like, again, like what I said about like the pizza story. My mom didn't say no to me because she didn't love me. She said no to me because she did love me. And
Mm,
she thought she was doing what's best for me in the moment. And
mm,
that's what healing has taught me. And that healing has opened my eyes to these beautiful things that my mom chose to take a piece of me with her
mm.
for eternity, that she chose, like, even though I left at 18, like she was holding on to something really beautiful that we had that couldn't, because of lack of communication. And to loop back to my books, that's also why I write about communication, because I've seen in my own relationships how it's evolved my relationships, but also I've seen, even though my mom and I can't communicate through words right now, I've seen how that open-mindedness can connect you with them and how you can still work things with them. And my mom was a
Mm,
beautiful woman. She really was.
mm. And
Yeah.
she really raised a beautiful daughter, and I feel honored, so honored to have you on the TWT podcast and
Thank you.
sharing all of these beautiful stories. I literally have traveled the world with you in this last hour. I felt like I was in Paris with you. I felt like I was in Europe with you. So I am so grateful for you sharing your heart with me and with
Thank
the
you.
TWT family. And like
Thank
I
you.
said at the beginning of this podcast, for all the listeners, nothing's wasted. And Christina really literally just made that very plain and beautiful for us. So until next week, wait, before I do that, Christina, how can we follow you? How can we get in contact with you? Please share all the places where we could purchase your books when they're ready, because that I know that there's so many people. I mean, I wish you all can see how beautiful these books are and how, oh my God, they're so cute. I'm thinking of my nieces. I'm thinking of, the children that I get to serve in schools. I
Yeah.
play a blessing that these books will be a part of curriculum for kids that have social emotional needs and they don't know how to communicate. I just believe that these are going to go even further than you could even imagine, because it's
Yeah.
something needed. So how can we
Yeah.
be in contact with you?
Absolutely. So I have my website, which is www.cccokl. I'm also on all social media. I am on Pinterest. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm the most active on Facebook and Instagram because of the nature of the content. Pinterest is more of a search. LinkedIn, I am on LinkedIn, but again, it's more B2B. But the best way, and I do send out newsletters with my blogs when I
Okay.
have them, press announcements. So like when this podcast is released, I always like to do that like I always, 'cause I do feel it's important because again, this is a relationship. This is like,
Yes.
I'm helping, you're helping me. I want to help you. You know what I
Yes.
mean? This is a two-way street, a
This
beautiful
is
two-way
lifting
street.
as you climb at its finest.
Yeah.
So,
Yes.
TWT family, we will have all of her information in the show notes. This has literally been a pleasure. Thank you so much for pouring into me and allowing me to pour into you, because I believe in 2023, we're going to have more reciprocal relationships. There's going to be more collaboration that happens.
Mhm.
And so, I want to just invite everyone listening to be open to that. Allow your inner child to feel safe enough to be seen, to be heard, and to collaborate with folks that are truly have your best interests. Until next week, TWT family, remember to lift as you climb, turn your trials into treasures, live a life to inspire and not impress, and allow God to fully restore you. Until next week, bye bye.